So let's do a little intro then. So welcome to episode 6 of Is Anyone Even Listening to Me with me, Martin Housley-Smith. Today's guest, Nicky Harveson. Welcome, Nicky.
Hi, Martin.
Thank you for coming on. We've got Nicky on today to talk about the importance of play in learning. This podcast is sort of loosely about education and learning and all things connected to that. So she's coming on to talk about the importance of play. So let's give her a little introduction through her bio. And then you can expand on this, Nicky, because there's so much to expand on, I think. So Nicky works for Active Gloucestershire to create positive learning experiences for young people through community engagement and advocacy. She's a champion for child-first coaching and stands on the soapbox calling for more play. I love that statement, which is on your LinkedIn. You're also a very highly qualified cycle coach. I see looking at your qualifications. So let's start with you. How did all that come about?
Passage of time.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
It's really interesting. It's an evolution, isn't it? When you get to my age and you look back on how, where you stand right now to where you actually started, you realise that so much has spanned those years. But most importantly for me, and because it's about education, I guess, I have a love of learning and exploration. And that stayed with me no matter what I've done. And so I guess I'm here because I'm curious. I like to figure things out. And I've gone where I have felt most playful throughout my career. And I suppose in the last sort of 10 years, the cycling coaching has really been prominent in my kind of learning journey. You start out not really knowing how to coach a skill, being a sports coach and coach a skill, and then figure that out. And then all of a sudden you start to think, well, actually, how do I coach? Not just what the skill is and getting someone to do a wheelie. How do you actually put that person at the center of the work that you do as a coach? And that child first has really sort of come around in the last few years. And the language that I have used has come around in the last few years as well. So when I first started, I wouldn't have said child first coaching. I might have said person centered, but it's only more recently child first coaching has come about as a kind of idea that's, the language that I use now. And it's been around for years, I know, but it's an idea to me.
Well, I think it's something as well in schools and education they've been talking about for some time, but ultimately in the classroom, we are still seeing quite a lot of teacher-led, so that whoever it is stood at the front of the class, with all the best will in the world, we're still seeing quite a lot of teachers stood at the front of the classroom delivering material to pupils. So that idea of what you're doing in the cycle playground, if you like, when you're out there, is something that and part of the reason it's interesting to talk to you is to see how effective that is, because that is something we should be thinking about in the education classroom as well in schools. Schools should be taking this on board more and more. Some teachers are, but I wouldn't say at all it's universal.
No, I think I'd agree with that. And it's the same in the coaching world as well. We talk about coach-led, which, is your teacher-led, coach-led sessions that we run, are generally, coach at the front, telling the rider what to do, go and do it, come back, some feedback, and now you're going to go and do this again. And that cycle of session planning, session design, session delivery is out there everywhere. But actually, the more I've realised that the rider should come first, and for me, that rider is usually a young rider, so it's child first, the better I have become as a coach and the better my riders have become as well. And I think that's what's really important.
I mean, why do you feel that, because I have this question myself for teachers as well all the time, why do we feel the need to lead, if you like, that sort of need, that's a the phrase just came out of that, the need to lead. We do have that need to lead, don't we? To stand at the front, to deliver. It's almost because we're getting paid to do this. We're the ones with the knowledge. And also, do you feel sometimes that sort of stepping back is quite a big step to take? And there's a lot of fear that comes with that. I'm not doing my job if I am stood here watching kids play. That you've got to earn your crust, if you like, as a coach or a teacher.
I agree. It's something around, when you're learning, the easiest way to do something is to put it into practice for yourself. So I found that the easiest way for me to learn to coach was actually to stand at the front and coach. It's how you're taught from a national governing body. You're given their coach education. and you are literally told to stand at the front. This is what, by the end of this session, you will be able to, and here's what we're going to do to make you do that. As I've got better as a coach, I've realised that I don't need to be the one talking. I need to be the one observing and watching and listening, because then I know that I can get more out of that rider. But that's a journey that not all coaches or all teachers take, because you get ingrained in doing it your way and doing it the way that you were taught. You don't always look at the outcome that's coming for the person in front of you. You look at what you're measured against. So if you have a target, you kind of work towards achieving the target. And we have this thing at the moment, particularly around sort of evaluation. When the target becomes the measure, you're not creating an impactful intervention, because all you're doing is making sure that you're answering the phone within 30 seconds or sending an email within 2 days. But actually, the young person who's waiting to go and to do some activity to help for their mental health, the impact isn't that you've got to them in 3 days with an email. The impact is that they're actually in that activity, having fun and doing whatever it is that they need for themselves to reconnect with themselves and the world around them. So it doesn't actually matter how quickly you get to that, but that's what we measure ourselves against often, our response rate. And as a teacher or a coach, it's our ability to get through a curriculum, our ability to get through, by the end of the session, you will be able to. I don't know how many coaches, and I certainly didn't do it myself, actually measured, go, how many of them actually did that skill by the end of the hour? Like, really? Yeah, by next session, you're going to be on a wheelie. No, that's not going to happen at the end of an hour. So actually now rethinking the way that I coach and putting that young person at the front, they aren't going to be able to wheelie by the end of the hour unless they've already done a lot of practice at it. And all of a sudden you start to think about, well, what is it that I'm helping them to do at the end of this hour? By the end of this hour, we're going to have a lot of fun. And you're going to walk away probably somewhere in that messy middle of learning. But I'm going to make sure that you get there with joy and, want to come back next week to continue that learning process. And that, for me, is where I've sort of got to with this now. And that's where my soapbox kind of comes in, I suppose.
It comes down to there's a few things that kind of can come from that. I mean, first of all, I do wonder sometimes, talking to teachers, I think, if we took away assessment, if we took away the need to absolutely follow curricula, how would you teach? If there was no pressure on the grades at the end, and if, say, you were teaching a subject and say that subject was English, what English would you teach to engage your pupils? And just coincidentally, last night, I had a WhatsApp conversation with a former colleague who was talking about the idea of the engagement model as opposed to sort of measurement of academic progress. What about if we measured engagement and fun and learning, actually measured learning, which you can do? That's kind of what you're talking about, Smith, isn't it? Are we going to look at them, have their fun level improved, and through that, have the skill got better?
Yeah.
And I think,
whilst they're going through that process, they're also learning the techniques of learning. They're learning what they can figure out for themselves. They're problem solving. They become the champions of their own direction. And I feel that is so much more powerful than going, I know everything about, take my daughter example, Victorian poetry, for example, for my A-levels.
Yeah. But didn't we, I'm going to put us loosely in the same age category, somewhere if we were ticking a box on a survey. That was almost our childhood, wasn't it, though? I remember I was taught to ride a bike by my dad, to loosely, quickly holding the saddle and shoving you off, and once you were going, that's it, you can ride a bike. But everything else, how to do a wheelie, how to skid, how to jump off a curb, all of those things, you were taught by that, or yourself or your mates, weren't you?
Absolutely.
And that sort of like was exactly what you're talking about. We had a child-led learning experience as children, whether that was how to climb a tree, fall out of it repeatedly, but still get up and do it again. Or do we think we're losing that a little bit? I mean, there's so many organised activities for kids, aren't there now? And they're great. My kids do loads of those, and you're organising those sessions. But do you think we're losing that sort of?
We are definitely losing that, and there's a lot of research about this as well. And maybe after this, I'll give you some links that you might want to put with this.
Please,
There's a very serious side to this at the moment, and it's called The State of Play. And there was a report written last month, published last month, not written last month, obviously. It's been researched and reviewed since sort of mid 2024 by a group of 20 commissioners who have come together, all with play as their kind of foundation as their kind of work and idea, and trying to persuade the government to change the state of play in England. Wales and Scotland have already done this. They put play at the heart of their kind of policy and decision making. England are sort of still going through that process. And what's fascinating is all the research that's gone into this around why all of a sudden we are in this, I guess, struggle with how we help young people play. Some of that is their time to play. Some of it is about places to play. And some of it is around sort of understanding why learning through play, which is what we've been talking about. And the places to play have diminished. Parks are, disappearing. Housing estates are going up, but aren't being designed with green spaces in it. You've got time being eked out of the curriculum for play time, for breaks. And that's not just in primary, but, not just in secondary school, but also in primary school now. And what we know about play is that everybody should have it. Everybody should have that time to play, no matter what age you are. There's a really great piece on the Play Wales website around why teenagers should play and what play looks like as a teenager. And of course, teen play is different to primary age play, and it's different to adult play. But we all still need it. And we need it to develop and be creative and keep innovating in our world. And that, I think, is that for me is really important. So there's a lot out there at the moment, and a kind of big movement going on around sort of play sufficiency and the state of play and how we can put this back into our policies and, strategies.
And you're exactly right there, thinking about that in schools. You have your sort of formalised learning will go on for an hour and a half in the morning, and then you'll get a 15, 20-minute token break, which really is being released into a concrete playground where often schools who have great play areas outside, but it's not always the case. And sometimes it can feel like you're being released into a prison yard. You can do a few laps and you come back in, more learning. So I think you're exactly right when you talk about that. And age is an interesting one as well, isn't it? Because that question of, is it something that we grow out of? We don't grow out of it. You're exactly right. But I think sometimes we have this need to sort of formalise it, where we sort of say, right, play has become something that you now pay for. It's paintballing. You join a cycle club. You go off with a group of guys, and you're not popping wheelies in a playground. You're chain ganging down the road. It becomes something different, doesn't it? And it becomes more structured. And I guess this is where, as a coach, it's trying to make sure that whilst riders come to us for an hour and a half for their session, that isn't a structured session in a way that they would feel like they are at school. We did some feedback from our young riders, about what they wanted from us as coaches, from the club, from the environment that we set. And what was really telling and a thread through it was, we don't want our coaches to be teachers. We want our coaches to be our friends. And for us at the club, we kind of unpacked that a little bit. And it was really around, they don't want to come and feel like they're learning, but they do want to improve in their cycling. So how do we do that? How do we capture those things? And for me, play was the answer. Play is probably always the answer. And you almost become a mentor, don't you? You're sometimes hanging out with them, and when you see an opportunity, they're not so great on the wheelie, they're not so great on the endo, they can't skid properly. Let's teach them how to do those skills. And I think sometimes you do see that. I've noticed you see it in places like, I was really good at the skateboard parks. You see very much the older generation of skateboarders helping the younger generation of skateboarders more often than not. Literally sort of holding their hands over the rails so that they're not taking a massive tumble, showing them those skills. And I think some people would think, well, that's maybe not a group of people I'd expect to do that. But it is out there, isn't it? Sometimes it happens naturally. It's just people having a love for the same activity. And I just noticed I've just gone like a Bond baddie because the sunlight's coming through the window. I'll edit that bit out.
Well, you can use the white cat, Martin. That's
the white cat. That aspect of it is really important. And what you're doing there is you're doing that as part of your job, aren't you? Yeah. I think that's really valuable. Because it is that old adage, isn't it?
I like your skateboard analogy. We go to BMX tracks, so it's a very similar environment. And we call it party at the pump track because it's kind of what it is. There's no coaching going on. We just arrive. It's an open session. People can come and play. And, if they want to come and talk to a coach, they can then come and chat to me about something they're doing, something they're trying. There's lots of, Nicky, can you film this? Nicky, can you watch this? And those are moments when you can, just simply observe what they're doing. But the greatest joy there is how they then support each other. So our older riders support the younger riders and tell them what to do. And I just almost stand back and just watch it all happen. And I think that for me it's a real joy, because that's free play in action in what is essentially a coaching environment.
And that, in a way, is almost what we should be trying to achieve in school settings as well, where we do set our young people by age, definitely, by ability sometimes, but sometimes why not mix the highest with the lowest in terms of ability? Get the highest to teach the lowest, get the older kids to show the young kids how to do things. Sometimes you see that in practice, and it's quite enlightening actually to go, okay, we don't have to put them all together just because they're year age, just because they're all 12 and 13 years old. And that's a really interesting approach to take it, isn't it? I'm just going back to the age thing. I think that's really interesting that this idea that as we get older, do we stop playing? When I've got young kids now, and because I've got young kids, I've got back into roller skating. I've relearned how to roller skate. My youngest has a remote control car. Now I have a remote control, and we take them for walks around the village like dogs, So I think, but for me, I'm as excited about that remote control car, that roller skating as they are, because it opens the door to allow you to be a child again, doesn't it? And I think that's really interesting. We stop ourselves from doing that. But isn't cycling? I mean, I was, pre-children, a very keen cyclist living up in the Lake District, and I know that feeling of being at the top of a big hill on a mountain bike, and the 9-year-old, 10-year-old in you kicks in again, doesn't it? I'm not putting my brakes on, and you just see how far, and that risk-taking comes back, doesn't it? You start feeling like a child again as you're doing those activities.
Yeah. You test your boundaries, and you find what your limits are, or your limiters, I would say. It's not your limits as much as your limiters. And then you can start to push those. So once you know what your limiters are, you can then go, right, how do I get beyond that? We talk about being in our comfort zone, being out of our comfort zone. And how do we switch, how do we expand our comfort zone? It's through risky play that allows us to develop and explore what that boundary looks like and how we get over those limiters for ourselves. So I think that's really important. Yeah. So standing at the top of a hill with your brakes off, it's a great analogy.
And do you think that, because when we were younger, we did, I'd use the word feral. We were slightly more feral than kids these days. The fact that we would be out at lunch, out in the morning, and lunch would be at somebody's house. Your mum sort of knew where you were. You found your mates because there were more bikes in that front garden than any other front garden. And that was the way, we were out there so much more testing our limits and also, taking risks. And as you would know, some of those things you would not tell your parents, some of those risks you've taken. And I was very much of the Evel Knievel generation. I kind of do remember laying in a row of children as the local BMXer built a human ramp. And it was all voluntary. This wasn't forced, to see how many of us he could jump over. And it would get up to sort of 6, 7, 8 kids. I don't remember anyone ever being landed on.
No, but you were always hoping you weren't the last one.
Yes, but even things like, finding a cigarette lighter in the woods and trying to figure out how to build a fire and all those sort of things, that maybe that I'm not saying we should let kids just run amok, but certainly when we were younger, there was an element of that going on. Yeah. And was it because we had little else to do, but going outside was a natural thing to do? Our bikes were our playthings, skateboards were our playthings, the concrete was our soft play. Yeah. It was. Yeah.
And you learnt by doing, and you knew, which tree you could climb easily, and you knew which tree you could jump out of. And then you would, it's against that skate park BMX analogy. Your mates would go, I jumped from the 3rd branch last week, but I did it like this. And if you bend your knees in this way and you kind of do this sort of roll like this, then you'll be fine.
Yeah, goading each other on.
Isn't that coaching?
Yeah. It is.
That's it in a nutshell.
And maybe we've sort of formalised and given a word to something we were all doing as kids. We used to call it goading each other on. Now you call it coaching. And maybe there's more of a line to be drawn. But I just wonder why.
Because everyone's clapping around you going, yeah, go, go, go.
Yeah, I certainly think this idea of as an adult sort of formalising and legitimising play is a really big thing. We've in class just got into Warhammer. I know this is not related to sort of fitness cycling things, but that has allowed me and the teaching assistant to revisit a childhood of sitting and painting little plastic figures and rolling dice and pretending to sort of shoot each other on a board with the kids. And I think we're more excited than the kids. And I think, it's a shame, isn't it, that we grow out of these things, that we look for hobbies, though, don't we? We do look for hobbies, a lot of which are connected to the kind of things we were doing back in childhood. A couple of years ago, I got into a big phase of fencing. Well, how many times as a kid was I running around a wood with a stick?
With a stick, as a sword.
Or it kind of took me back to my Star Wars days,
Yes.
and in my head, you kind of making a noise as you're fencing, And I think it's just interesting, isn't it, that we stop, and we shouldn't.
No, we really shouldn't.
And how do we, though? There is the phrase, isn't there? We don't stop playing because we grow old because we stop playing.
Yeah.
And maybe, I wonder, even for things like, the NHS and mental health issues and self-esteem and all of these things, what impact it would have if we were allowed more time to play.
So that's something that really interests me. My background and the job that I do, the hat that I put on is around physical activity. But for me, it's more about how do we move our bodies to move our minds? What helps us to get moving? And yes, I focus, on children and young people. But actually, when we look at sort of that sort of physical activity, it's throughout our lifetime. It's not about we suddenly, stop. We do stop for various reasons. Lots of different barriers are put in our way, or we put them in our way to stop being active. But I think if we think about it as being joyful, playful, creative, it doesn't matter what we're doing to move our bodies. It will only ever help us. But it's the same with learning. If we are connected to what we're learning and what we're improving in ourselves, if we're playful throughout it, we'll stay with it for longer. We'll stay that extra 15 minutes to build a Lego toy.
Yeah,
I will sit and work out and knit. So I love knitting, and I will stay and work out my pattern because I'm creating something. And that's still play. It's still playful.
It is. And I love the Lego analogy is one of my favourites because obviously grown adults love Lego. If you put them in a room full of Lego, what do? They're straight in there before the kids, aren't they?
Absolutely.
I have Lego in school. I could spend afternoons building Star Wars Lego and all the houses and all the things. I'm not so keen when they move away from, in terms of play, I'm not so keen when they move away from the instructions. I thought as a kid, can we just build the model? I know that's not the theme of the podcast, but I'm a bit like that. But, is this a reason why we collect when we're older?
Yeah.
Well, you often see, adults with shelves of Lego behind them on podcasts.
I'm looking at mine in front of me, actually.
Yeah. But is it in that same way that maybe because we don't have that access to that part of our childhood as much anymore, it's that little nostalgia moment, isn't it? It's a legitimate nostalgia to go back and sort of say, okay, I can have Lego on my shelf. That's okay.
And I think, Lego is great. We've got a session on Monday around environmental sustainability within physical activity environment. We're looking at our strategy, which sounds big and grand and wonderful.
Really does.
But I know that part of our session on Monday is going to be with Lego. We're going to be creating because we cannot get ourselves into a thinking space around environmental sustainability without getting into a creative mindset. And to get into that creative mindset, play is the most, it's foundational for us. So there is something, we know why, we've got Lego Serious Play. It's important. It creates connections and links within our brains in order to be able to do something much bigger in the future, in that, at the end of the day. So I think, this is why it's foundational. It's when you read any of the research, play is foundational in everything that we do. And what struck me was you talked earlier around, what stops us. And I'm going to take us into this sort of space now where we stop playing and we get quite sort of dismal about it. And for some of it, for me, as a female, as a girl growing up, like act like a girl was something that was told me, the umpteenth time that I came back with muddy knees from playing, climbing trees, wherever I would have been on my bike or the go-kart or whatever else. And it's that act like a girl. Why do you not act like a girl? And actually, funny enough, it wasn't my parents that said that. It was actually a club that I used to go to. And obviously it was an all-female group that I went to at the time. But it was like, why don't you act like a girl? But I am. I am a girl. I am acting like a girl. I couldn't understand that at the time. But, you then launch into, you're wasting your time, stop being so messy, stop messing about. Who do you think you are to climb a tree? And for me, there was those sort of lots and lots of conversations with people through a particular age in my, stage of my development, that I then started to go, well, why am I doing this? Why do I need to stop? I mean, thankfully for me, it slowed me down. It didn't stop me. I went and carried on playing, I went and played rugby. So, I didn't actually stop acting like a girl at all. I went and did things because I was a girl and wanted to prove that you could do these things because you're a girl. So I think in a way, for me, it brought out the rebellion side and sort of going and doing these things. But I know that for hundreds of girls, thousands of girls, it stops them for a very long time. And if you don't have really, good people around you that kind of go, look, just don't listen to them, Nick. And one of those was my mum and the other was my dad, who went, you don't listen to them. It's fine. And that supportive network at home enabled me to kind of not shape myself because someone told me that I needed to act like a girl, thankfully. But I know that there are lots of women out there who had those experiences and stopped doing things. I still mess around in the mud. I ride mountain bikes. I encourage boys and girls to come and get muddier every weekend on a mountain bike and just enjoy the fun of having, mud freckles and, experience that. And we need more of that, less of the language that says stop messing around.
And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, at school, I'm the qualified forest school lead, but we've been working with the Midlinks Wildlife Trust for years now, taking kids up there to work, effective volunteer work on the nature reserve. But it involves saws and tools and fire and getting your hands dirty. And it's always kind of amazing to me how many of them, the first time we take them up there, have genuinely never been in a wood. They've never seen a large group of trees in one place and being allowed to sort of play in that arena, and you get kids who don't want to help. They want to climb trees. They want to. I remember one young man just wanted to just walk around and look for stuff. So he'd come every week and all he would do would walk around looking for stuff. And sometimes he would come back with stuff. He came over once, came back with a Bovril bottle from about 1976 or something, like it was a Roman treasure. Those kind of, but that, as we did when we were younger, is definitely something that has gone. And I think that need to be outdoors, and for our young generation as well, like in terms of mental health and self-esteem, and just like you say, getting a mud-freckled face and that sense of, my cheeks have got some colour in them and they feel better and they start to understand what it's like to be outdoors, needs encouraging more. And I don't know, I mean, did you run sort of parent sessions to get them involved, to say, look, this is what we want your kids to be getting involved with, or how do we get the adults involved with that?
Yeah, the best way that we found at our club is to invite them along. Come and have a go. Get on your bikes.
Yeah, on your bikes.
Sitting in a classroom with a group of parents to say, this is how we're having fun, just feels so opposite to what we're trying to achieve. So we go, well, we're doing an adventure ride. Come along. We created a women's adventure ride to kind of supplement. We have a sort of adventure ride on a Wednesday night. We all go out for a ride. We control, we've got ride leaders who sort of, look after the group of young people. But parents can come and join us, and they can join whichever group they want to join. So there's usually about 30 to 40 of us on the hill occasionally. It's quite manic. We all go off in our little groups of 8. And then some of the mums were going, well, what about us? And some of them did start joining the Wednesday night group, but it can be quite hectic and chaotic. So one of our leaders said, I'd really like to put a girls group, a women's group together. Crack on, let's do it. And now we have equal numbers of mums coming along to our rides. And that is fantastic.
And maybe just going back to what you were saying about you when you were younger and a girl and the comments you received then, maybe some of those women have been receiving those comments but didn't do what you did. And maybe this suddenly is this gateway, you've opened this gateway to say, come and have a play like you didn't when you were younger. And equally, maybe you've opened that gateway to play for those adults again, in the same way that my kids have been almost like a thing I can hold up and say, it's okay, I can get back on my roller skates now, but I still wouldn't go on the street on my own. even though I'd love to. And when I'm out there, I'm kind of thinking, I used to be able to go backwards on these things. And my brain is kind of going, I'm a bit older now. If I fall, it's a bit different now. But equally,
a bit different.
You want to get back in that play arena, don't you? I love going down the roller disco and getting the bikes out. I was desperate for my kids to, and it was really during lockdown for the first one, for their legs to get just long enough so they could get on the back of the tandem. And then we could go on those tandem rides, and I think you want to get back involved in all those things you did as a child, didn't you? And
absolutely.
Again, it goes back to that question, why do we stop?
Well, I live in a cul-de-sac. And what's really nice is that obviously not a lot of cars come down here as a through road. It literally is. It took me back to my childhood where you put jumpers at one end of the road, jumpers at the other. And then if a car came, car's here, everyone go, pick up the jumpers, put it to the side, wave the car through, and then put it all back again. And then whatever playground was recreated. So it's a similar feeling for us outside our road here. And again, actually during lockdown, but even not during lockdown, I'm often up and down my road practicing my wheelies, my lifts, jumping up and down off the curbs. And one of my neighbours thinks it's hilarious because she's like, "What were you doing?" I was just practicing my bike handling skills in the middle of the street. And I gave a load of cones to the kids who live in our road as well. And probably about 18 months, they're still there. They use them almost every day. And they put them out and they create courses and I love that because there's laughter and conversation going on until it's dusk, until they have to go home. There's none of this only on my side of the street because it's an O3 road. They can create that space to play. But again, we've designed a lot of that out, but you very rarely see the adults out there. Only me and my husband probably going up and down on our bikes every now and again. Or roller skates when the kids were little. I did get my roller skates back out again.
And it's just so interesting, isn't it? When when I was teaching the girls to roller skate out the front and I'd put cones out to teach them to turn, like you say there. And every Tuesday night, the running club comes down our street. It's quite big. We live in a village, but they've got a big running club. So they all come running. And I can guarantee you, nearly to a man and a woman, they weave in and out of those cones. The kid thinks it's hilarious. They're in the street and all the runners come up the street and they all weave in and out of the cones as they go past. But you're right, that game, when we were younger, games of cricket in the street, someone would set it up and suddenly all the doors would be open, all the kids would be out, the parents would be out. There was an old ammo box because our neighbour was an RAF guy, used as cricket stumps, and that shout of car, you're exactly right. And I mean, times have changed, haven't they? And maybe there are more cars on the road, it's not as safe to be out there doing those things all the time. And maybe, therefore, we do need more provision like you're providing where we have to have these structured activities. But that doesn't mean the play element has to be taken out of that, does it? It doesn't mean because do you feel sometimes a bit, I'm paying for this, so there should be very formal teaching. My kids should come away better. They should be learning.
And some of that does come through when I'm talking to other coaches in other areas. So we've created this very playful club. It's founded on, for the smiles. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we've got some serious riders who really want to race nationally, race internationally. So they are, they're very good. But even when they want to go on and perform, we still have play at the heart of that because they can't lose sight of the fun. If you lose sight of having fun of riding your bikes, then, you're going to fall out of love and you're going to stop. Even if you talk to any of the elite riders, you hear them in conversations, they tell you how much fun they're still having. And until they stop having fun, then they're not going to stop riding their bikes. And that is really important phrase. But I talk to other coaches who, whose parents, said, well, one conversation went along the lines of, yes, but when my parents pick up their children, the first thing they ask their kids is, what have you learnt today? So what we need to practice, helping these parents to ask a different question. What fun did you have today? And that should be the first question out of any parent's mouth. What fun did you have today? And it's the same for coming home from school. I never used to ask my kids, what did you learn today? What was fun about today? What do you enjoy about your day? And I would get, sometimes from the teenager, I would get a harumph. Well, school is not fun. But it is supposed to be fun. I go to work to have fun. It's not that it isn't serious and I don't get really, get it done. But I have to come home and go, well, that was fun.
I love the idea that, you're saying about sort of you'll see more serious riders, those more elite riders who still come down with that element of still having fun. And I do remember racing bikes on the Criterion racing track and knowing every week that there were way better riders than me that I was never going to place in those races. But sometimes with the guys from my cycling club who were in a similar sort of position, just sat in the pack thinking, shall we just go off the front really fast for a bit and see what happens?
Just for a laugh.
You were never going to win, but just for a laugh. And I just sometimes when I'm watching the Tour de France think, I wonder if that guy's just gone off the front there. Just for a laugh, how long can I hold off?
With his mate.
He's made a bet with his mate. I reckon you've got about 5 minutes before they catch you, and that sort of like game of tag going on in Tour de France, as opposed to they're all completely serious all the time. And maybe
Tour de France bingo.
That's it. Yeah,
how many rides can you take up with you?
We're watching it differently now. Looking at go, he's gone up that hill as fast as he can, just see how long he can stay away. Not because he's any intention of winning the jersey on this particular occasion.
But actually, everyone's going to be talking about that moment for.
I remember making the Lancaster Guardian with two of my cycle friends because we did that one week, and I think we stayed away for about 10 minutes, and it was almost written up as a joke. Oh, they've done it again, but I think this time they stayed away for 10 minutes because we were never going to win. But the idea of just having a play while you're out there,
absolutely,
yeah.
I think that's really important. But you then again, going back to it's understanding your comfort zones, isn't it? And like going, do you know what? It doesn't matter. I just want to know how hard I can go.
Yeah,
try it.
Yeah.
Try it one day. And this is what we talk to our riders who race, don't go in so serious that, there's only going to be one person that's going to win that race. And there might be 50 to 100 riders in that race. Only one person's going to stand on the top. But my goodness, if that one person's going to stand on the top, you have to have the other 99 there. And, go in with the attitude of having fun and enjoying yourself. And you never know what might actually happen. Your break of 10 minutes ahead up the road might have actually worked. You'd have been really surprised, but it might have worked.
You may have got away one week just by accident. Yeah, they've all mistimed and thought they'll never stay away. And then suddenly they're not chasing you and suddenly you're 15 minutes ahead. But it was always the same when I was riding and racing cyclocross, because that's the ultimate. People will maybe explain that a bit shortly, but cyclocross was the ultimate form of that fun type of racing, because after about 5 or 6 minutes, nobody knows who's in the lead anyway.
No.
So you're kind of just going in this muddy circle, chasing the guy ahead of you, and you get these little micro races going on in the big race. And at the end of it, I couldn't even count my laps, and suddenly you've just finished, and you're going, I don't know where I am in that. I don't know, but I've had a lot of fun.
Someone's counting the laps.
Because they hope someone's counting the laps, but certain types of sport like cyclocross is a great one for that muddy freckle face, isn't it? You're just out there playing in the mud, and you want it to be muddy. You don't want a dry course, do you? You want to be running with your bike and slipping in the mud and all the rest of it. So all of this must have a function, though. What is the function of having this attitude and thinking of the importance of play? I mean, in terms of what you see in the animal kingdom.
Yes.
Animals play all the time, and particularly the more intelligent species, you see the adults playing: chimpanzees, dolphins, parrots. And I remember reading Conrad Lorenz's King Solomon's Ring, a book about animal behaviour, and talking about crows just waiting for windy days so they could have a laugh in the wind. Adult crows just launching themselves like kites into the wind for no other purpose than the fact that they got a buzz out of it. I was doing a bit of research, and I found a lovely example of ravens snowboarding down icy roofs in Norway. They climb up the roof and just slide down the roof, making no attempt to fly, just and zoom off the end of it. So there must be like an evolved purpose to this. What is the point of this to humans? Because we're the ultimate, some people would say differently, but we are an intelligent species. Why are we doing it?
Yeah, and I think it's for maybe similar reasons, but it first and foremost, it is fun. We are high functioning, high thinking beings, but actually, if we can't have a giggle, then life becomes pretty dull. And when it's dull, we start to feel different emotions that we don't really want to always connect with. And when you're in that space, everything starts to feel heavier. Important things feel less important, and you stop kind of getting out. And I think the magic of play taps into that sort of sadness and that soul of things and starts to bring you out. The beauty of play, if done often enough, holds you in a space where you can balance those emotions really well. So that if something sad happens, you are going to be sad for a while, but it's okay because you can suddenly reconnect back to something just by going and connecting with a friend and having a conversation. For them getting out, going, should we just go and have a walk? Let's just go and get up into the woods and like you say, go and have a look. Go into the trees, kick around with a ball. But your kids come and say, "Mum, can you come and play shops with me?" When they were little, come and teach me how to do this tiny thing that you keep doing on a roller skate. And you can be brought out of yourself and into something a little bit more, that's a little bit lighter and a little bit more free. So I think that's part of it for me, that fun element is it keeps life moving along. But it's also essential for our development. Creative thought doesn't happen in in isolation, sitting on your own, trying to force something out. I remember sitting back at school trying to force an essay out. The worst thing in the world. And I was really rubbish at school. I left school with, I didn't leave. I left school with more GCSEs because I had to go and retake all my GCSEs, basically. So I used to have to force things. But in order to realise how I learned, I was more creative. So therefore, I needed to be creative in order to be able to get that essay out. If I couldn't go and think it out on my bike, on a walk, doing something else, it wouldn't happen. The play was essential for me to be able to do something more serious, which was pass my English exam for the second.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it because it puts into this sort of essential part of human functioning. If you imagine what would happen if you took it away, because if you took it away, there'd be no communication, there would be no sociability. It can't all be about work, work, work. We're not ants, are we? Although I did read some evidence actually that even ants have a little play. That they get together and almost have little pretend wars with each other, as we did when we were kids, just to practice if ever they needed to go to war for real. And I just love the idea of that. So maybe in all of the animal kingdom, if you take play away, it definitely has absolute function. And also there's the other side, isn't it? You're talking about that sort of positive feelings, that dopamine hit, those endorphins that come out of it, that it's an escape. And isn't it a shame that we don't, therefore, if we point out that it's so important, that we don't make it as important as it should be in schools and home life and those sort of things. It's seen as a tag on, isn't it? Oh, you've got a bit of time for some play as a grown up. That's good.
We don't give it kudos and relevance.
No. And I don't know how to sort of take that back into school, really. I can give you an example in terms of learning. So I teach in SEND settings, so often the young people have challenges with their reading, their writing, and literature, and their use of words. So if I said to them, I want you to write something about this picture, boring activity anyway, but write something about this picture, they would struggle with that. But if I try to turn it into a nonsense poem where you guys just throw ideas, I show you a little animated film, you throw ideas at me, you throw words at me, anything comes into your head, and I'm going to write it down. And the words and the language and the things that they use, because it's playful, are completely different, and you produce something that's genuinely good as a collective. So we've played together with words. I've not made you write them down or read them. I've just made you shout them out. And if you take that element, there's no stress now. There's no rights or wrongs here, isn't it? It's the same as playing with a bike on the park. If you don't say you've got to get that wheelie right first time, I need to see the perfect wheelie, things change. Yeah. And I think, how do we do that more?
Our brains, I think, work better when, my brain certainly works better when I've come at it with it from a creative space. I read in pictures. So if I'm reading something, I'm seeing it in my head. I don't see the words necessarily. I see the picture of the words that are coming through. Yeah. And I think that we all probably have those different ways of connecting. And like you say, in your school, if you are showing a picture and trying to put words to it, I would find that really difficult. I'd have to search really hard, and it would take me hours to write that. If I'm asked to write a blog post for work, I really struggled. Now it's great because we've got this wonderful device in our hands that I can record it, and it transcribes it for me. And that transcription then comes into my inbox, and then I will look at it and go, right, so now I can coordinate my thoughts. So I can write an essay, a blog, now in next to no time. Because it's not that it isn't in there, it's just that it wouldn't be written on paper very quickly.
And I think you're right in this, to talk about it like that, and to you're removing the pressure, aren't you? Play is about taking the pressure away and not formalising an activity. And from anything through, whether it's literature, maths, cycling, science, whatever it happens to be, skateboarding, roller skating, if you take away that pressure and it becomes more fun, I certainly find that my learning, because of my engagement is better, therefore my learning is better. And there's also research is suggesting there a positive correlation between the amount of play young people engage in and behaviour. Yeah. You know, if you make things playful, their behaviour becomes better. And I certainly know from teaching thousands of kids probably over 25 years, that when things are fun, even the tricky kids get easy. Yeah. Because you're giving them something that they want to join in with. So certainly in terms of, you know, your kids who need sport, who are often sort of your SMH kids quite often, those who maybe have a bit of neurodivergence to get that energy out. Yeah. If you can make the activities more fun, they're going to spend more time wanting to be involved. So we need to get on board with this. How do we make play not just a part of cycle coaching, but a part of everything? Everything. All jobs, all workplaces. You know, I like when you listen to the way that offices like Pixar and Google run their offices. Play is an important integral part of their working day, isn't it? You know, sometimes they have days where, do they call them Google days or Pixar days or something, where they can just go off and do what they like for a day and just come back and show us what you've done. Yeah. And my understanding is with Disney and Pixar, that's quite often how some of their big movies start. Somebody had a little idea. The biggest ideas come from those smallest play elements. It's and then it's infectious, and then, you know, that's when you go away and there's different levels of play as well. You can go and like play on your own and be creative and draw and do whatever it is, and then, you know, things come from that. But then you just do that going and playing with others. And like you said, your group all coming up with the words. That's so playful because they're all riffing with each other. It's suddenly a ballad, not a solo. And you kind of work in unison with other people. And I love the game and this, and you create a story based on how things kind of flow. And all of a sudden, your one idea becomes so expansive because of using bringing in the ideas of others. And I think I did struggle with that solo work. I'm not a solo person when it comes to thinking things through. I work out loud. And those are really important to me. So working with coaches, when you work with someone who does the similar things and and all of a sudden the session is created before your very eyes from something that's very different to what you had on paper. And that's great. That's good coaching. Or good teaching, or you know. And I guess that's a skill that also either you have or haven't got or could learn or be coached into developing, is that ability to discard the plan if you need to, and to play as part of that, isn't it? This isn't working, let's go and just try something different. Let's just have a little play and see what we can do that's going to change. And I think maybe some people are going to teaching and education and learning in all aspects, particularly if you're new to it, want to stick to the plan. I know you spoke about this before, that need to sort of stick to the plan, and then as you get older, you become more confident in your own abilities, your own skills, and you're happy to go, actually, not working, I'm going to discard that and do something completely different. Because otherwise you lose that engagement, don't you? Yeah. Totally, yeah. I mean, there's something in planning it that, you know, kickstarts the thought process. And then there's something in play that enhances that process. Whether you're in play with the session that you've sort of written yourself, or whether you're in play with others trying to design and co-design something new. And that co-design can also come in for me with riders. So I might go with an idea or a thought, but then that voice of that young person starts to come in, and you sort of change the focus and the flow because of their voice, because of what they're telling you, or what even you might be seeing as they arrive and how they arrive. And you go, session today isn't going to land. They're doing this. They are more energetic, or they're less energetic, or they're starting to go over there and play with that. I wonder, actually, rather than taking them away from what they're doing, I'll just build, and it's that game of and again, only not with words, but with observations. Oh, they're starting to build a jump. Let's go on. I'll tell you what, we'll carry on with this. And then maybe I might get back to my session
toward the end, but I might not.
And to be honest, I regularly have days like this at school where, activities are out and the young people come in the morning and I've got a plan in my head of what I need to get out of them in that day. But for whatever reason, suddenly some of them have got some Play-Doh out. Some are playing with Lego. A couple are playing a game on the computer. Somebody's cardboard modelling a suit of armour in the corner. And you kind of go, actually, let's just leave them and see where this goes. And maybe that young person cardboard modelling that suit of armour in the corner, when he's finished, we can talk to him about how he got that done. And that could be some English, because that's speaking or listening, or we could get him to write some instructions. So there isn't always the need. I know in mainstream it's kind of difficult to do that, but in principle, it's an idea, isn't it? And I think certainly something that could be encouraged, at least at home. I was kind of thinking about lastly, really, in terms of, I know we've talked a little bit about development, but the importance of play as central to a young person's development. We've talked a bit about risk taking, but I just wonder whether some young people today, their attention span is changing, and play is something that could definitely help to develop that. I mean, without getting into a huge debate about screen time and the use of iPads and blah, 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 which we didn't have as much when we were younger, because if you had a computer, it took 45 minutes to load a game and we're all bored and out on our bikes by the time it loaded. I was just reading that it's really interesting that that screens, contrary to what people are thinking, are not actually impacting on young people's eyesight or their attention span. But what it is affecting is the way that they process dopamine. And that kids are now looking for a reassuring, regular dopamine hit, which is what kind of is coming from those kind of games. And I just wonder whether play is something that actually helps to counter that, because play encourages perseverance. And random perseverance as well, because you don't know when you're playing what the barrier you're going to have to overcome is. You don't know what the next sort of where you're going to have to shift your attention. I want to learn a wheelie, and you're doing it and you fail, and next time you do it, you probably won't succeed again. So you're not going to get that dopamine hit immediately, are you? So it's an interesting way of looking at play as a way of countering the impact of screens.
I think you're right. There is definitely that sense of quick hit that people get from those screens, and if they go out and do something like learning how to do a wheelie takes such a lot of time and effort. Even those that you see, the kids who've just learnt for themselves in their local park outside their house, they go down the street and they go for miles almost, it feels. They've still spent a lot of time working out how to do that.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of time. Takes a lot of time. And if we can't get those young people to spend that time to do that, they're never gonna do a skill like that. So that dopamine hit has to change. But you're right, play comes into it, I think, because it creates those motor skills that enable you to do stuff. It helps with perseverance. It changes your brain, because you have to go through a process to learn that perhaps isn't there in the classroom when you're given a piece of paper with the answers on, or you get a sheet with questions and you've got to find the answers for, or you can click boxes from left to right and go, it's those. You've got to work it out. You've got to be the problem solver in your own space. And so that can only help, surely. I'm not science.
No, I think it actually can, because I think something like, without getting too much into the debate and science of it, a screen is going to give you regular sort of little hits of dopamine. But that's very different to the big hit of excitement and the rush of endorphins and dopamine you're going to get from finally popping a wheelie that's going to last, like some of the kids seem to do for like half a mile all the way to school, don't they? Casually with a bag over their shoulder, one-handed holding a can of Monster in the other hand. And you kind of think, I don't know how you're doing that. But I think what it encourages, without them even knowing it, is that kind of perseverance. And if you could just encourage more people onto bikes and out and about and doing those kind of things, or even, it doesn't have to be sport, does it? It can be drama, it can be art, it can be all sorts of things. It's the same principle. And it's developing those same sort of skills. Yeah. Maybe that's a nice way to kind of wind down with it, really. I mean, what I would like to ask, just as almost like a final, as play is described as man's most useful preoccupation by some, I feel it would be pertinent to allow people to step onto that treadmill and start playing. How do you pop a wheelie? We've talked about them so much. How do you... I think I know the trick now, but let's kind of leave on this so people can go away, get their bikes out, grown-ups listening to this, and I know my demographic are loosely in our sort of age bracket, so they're going to want to do this. Get their bikes out, figure out how to do that again. How do you pop a wheelie, Nicky?
How do you pop a wheelie? Okay, well, it's the most... it's the strangest thing, actually, in the world. You think to pop a wheelie, you have to pull your bars up and lean back. The reality is the best way to actually start popping a wheelie is to push your bike down into the ground. And then as your bike is starting to rebound up, you then shift your body weight towards the back, and you straighten your arms up and your front wheel will come up. Now, a wheelie, that's kind of a manual, so that'll get your wheel off the ground and it'll be really exciting. And you'll go, oh my goodness, and you'll put it back down again straight away, and it's probably about an inch off the ground. But that's where you start pushing your bike into the ground. We call it compression, but it's opposite to what you think it is. And then once you're up, you can start, if you wanted to, you can put some power down through your pedals and actually then start the rotation of those wheels and pedals through.
And are we low gear or high gear?
Oh, well, that really depends, actually, I think, on who you are. Well, for me, I actually prefer a sort of middle gear.
Middle gear, okay.
It depends on the bike that you've got. I'm not gonna get all technical with you. But yeah, sometimes the easier gear helps you because you can get the pedal straight round. Sometimes the harder gear helps you because you can get the bike up.
I'm absolutely going to get back involved with wheelies. I think I used to be able to do them. It will certainly improve my street cred. We developed a game last summer. I call it a game where my daughter had a long piece of sort of climbing rope tied to the stem of my bike with a handle on the end and was water skiing up and down the road on her roller skates as I slowly towed her. But if I can develop that into a wheelie, then neighbours are going, that's going to end up on TikTok. So when that happens, I will post that and let you know. Look, I feel this conversation could go on forever, but I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It's been really enjoyable. Thanks, Martin.